Well, hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Mr. Rayo is just on board now, as I have admitted him out of the waiting room and into the office.
Here I am.
Yes. So another day, Mr. Rayo, where once again they were to the east of me. I was on the edge. I could hear the thunder. I had about maybe a dozen drops of rain. The sky was pretty threatening from early afternoon on, and it looks like it's getting a little dark out there now. Some fairly nice cells. Did you get something? Because I did notice they lined
Yes,
up along the Hudson and came north south.
it was Hammer City for a few minutes, along about, I would say around 5:10, 5:15 this afternoon. Skies got very dark, had some loud peals of thunder, and also got some heavy downpours. I don't know exactly how much. If my wife is monitoring the broadcast upstairs, maybe she can go over and check the weather station rain gauge and see how much we picked up. But over the weekend, Joe, we had over an inch of rain over this past weekend. We had
Yeah.
0.86 on Saturday. We had about another quarter of an inch yesterday. We had more today. So we've had our fair share of rain here over the last 3 days.
They kind of lined up along the Hudson River and also along the Connecticut River, and they were moving north south. I was watching a really strong cell that was lined up to come right over me. And as it entered Long Island Sound, it made a slight right hand adjustment. So it wound up going east of me. And as I said, I've seen, with what's on the radar, and I noticed on the radar tonight, there looks like there's a fairly strong cell now that moved through New York City or in the area surrounding it. We'll take a look on the radar in a moment. But this is all this upper low in New England, and it created a very, a very unstable atmosphere. Not enough for these thunderstorms to be classified as severe. They weren't severe cells, but they were good old fashioned little thunder bumpers that developed and moved on through. And for some areas that have been abnormally dry, they got a little bit of rain relief. For other areas, not so much. And I'm thinking that we will probably have a wash, rinse, repeat tomorrow and again on Wednesday.
Well, I think that tomorrow, the thing about the next couple of days, I think it's going to be a little cooler tomorrow, if you can call temperatures near 80 cool, but we reached 85 before the rain arrived this afternoon. So I think it'll be closer to, let's say, upper 70s to around 80 tomorrow, and again on Wednesday. And as far as precip is concerned, Joe, I think we'll have some late day thunder bumpers tomorrow. And I think Wednesday, more of a scattered or broad case of showers and storms. I think the uh, Wednesday will have a better chance of seeing wet weather as opposed to tomorrow. And then maybe we'll actually dry out a little bit later on this week.
Right, because by the time we get to Thursday, this upper low is going to weaken, open up, and drop southward. So that should uh, that should improve things. I'm just going to freshen the radar up here, and we'll take a look. And you see the rotation of these scattered showers and storms. It looks like one strong cell coming out of Rockland County moved over New York City is now in over Brooklyn and Queens. So why don't I bring up the Upton radar? That might help, and
Right.
we'll see what it looks like on there. Oh,
Yes.
what a day! What a day! Oh, they got a severe thunderstorm warning up even as we speak for Brooklyn and parts of Queens, and special marine warnings for the coastal waters. So here's what it looks like on the radar. The cell looks like it's just about near Kennedy Airport and moving southeastward. There's another batch that's developed between Monticello, Middletown, Poughkeepsie. Just kind of draw a triangle in there. That's what we're seeing on the radar, and those are moving southeast. It looks like there's a fair sized cell that's just exiting Sullivan County and moved into Orange County. So we'll see if that holds together. And as I mentioned, you see that area in Long Island Sound south of Bridgeport. It, in theory, should get to me because I'm right in line for that. But I'm telling you, it's going to wind up getting deflected to the east. They just don't. They seem to do that sometimes when they get into Long Island Sound. But this northwest, southeast movement, that's the upper low in northeastern New England, just rotating around. It's not moving anywhere, just rotating around and around. And you get these little spokes. I guess it's sort of like a bicycle wheel, just these spokes that rotate around. And every time one of these spokes goes by, you get some showers and storms with it.
It has been most interesting indeed. And yeah, the storm that got me at 5 o'clock, also, I believe they raised a severe thunderstorm warning for parts of Orange and Rockland County. Didn't quite, hit me head on, but I mean, it was enough to, bring some significant darkening to the sky, and also some brief bursts of heavy rain. I love when on my Davis weather station they always come up with the message, "It's raining cats and dogs." I look out the window and it's pouring, as if I didn't know that already. But in any case, we as I said, we've had here. I know, Joe, they seem to be going around your house, but for us up here in Putnam County, we've had more than our fair share of rain now over the last 3 days, and we may go ahead and do it again later tomorrow. And Wednesday looks like, as I said, the day to highlight for any kind of precipitation, any kind of showery and thundery weather. That's probably going to be the wettest day of the week, and then hopefully we'll be able to dry things out for the latter part of the week and into the upcoming holiday weekend.
I just switched over to the Boston radar, and there's some activity just north and east of Boston, out in the coastal waters, and it's twisting back in a counterclockwise fashion. So you can actually see where the upper low is. The cells in Massachusetts are moving pretty much north to south. The cells that are in Connecticut and northern Rhode Island, it looks like they're moving north, northwest, south, southeast. And the stuff that's off of eastern Long Island is moving southeastward. Why don't we go to Albany's radar and we'll take a look at that. And a couple of bands there. Looks like a band moved through Cobleskill to Albany to Pittsfield as an east-west band that's dropping southward. One thing that does happen, though, is once we get past sunset, a lot of this stuff is going to disappear in a hurry because the
Oh yeah.
instability, the atmosphere, the instability's gone, the daytime heating's gone. So you'll see these showers diminish rather quickly during the overnight, and then much the same, probably fire up again during the day tomorrow after we start out. I had a beautiful morning here. I mean, it just was gorgeous, deep blue sky, not a cloud anywhere. And by about, I'd say around 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock, suddenly these clouds just formed, and it went overcast for a little while. I thought it was going to rain for a moment. But I have to tell you, it's actually, even though the dew points are up into the low 60s, with the temperatures not really all that high here, I don't even think I made 80 today. It actually felt pretty comfortable.
Yeah, and
It was reasonable.
the last couple of days, I even scratching around and saying to myself, I wonder if it's worth, excuse me, I wonder if it's worth just taking the air conditioner down, turning it off for a little while. But with our system, it turns itself off anyway
Right.
after some minutes or whatever. But still, uh, this is not. We have not had, uh, let's say, absolutely oppressive or horrid conditions out there. Although, again, humid, and that's pretty well the story, I think, for much of this week, Joe. I honestly don't see temperatures or dew point temperatures dropping below 60 for the next 5, 6, 7 days around here.
Maybe toward the very end of the week or into the weekend, into Saturday, you might have some 50 dew points showing up inland. We'll see. If we that little back door comes by and maybe just gives us a little nudge of dry air, but still from the standpoint of the time of year, it's acceptable. I have the I brought up the Portland, Maine radar because as you remember from last week, we talked about how bone dry it's been in many areas up in central and northern New England because of the heat that they've had to endure, and it's been you know rainfall has been absolutely lacking. So this upper low sitting up there is actually producing some rain over western Maine, and that extends down to that arm that goes off the coast east of Boston. So there is some benefit to some areas, at least in New England, are getting some decent rainfall out of this.
And the positioning of this low, this upper, this upper low, Means I think that tomorrow and on Wednesday, quite a bit of cloud cover, probably more clouds than sun for the midday and the afternoon, keeping temperatures down. I have temperatures here in the Hudson Valley both tomorrow and again on Wednesday, generally in the upper 70s and lower 80s. But once we get to Thursday, Friday, and the weekend, look for temperatures to climb with more in the way of sunshine. We'll probably be seeing temperatures more like the mid and upper 80s, and maybe a few inland spots might even touch 90 as we get toward the latter part of the weekend on into the upcoming weekend. But these next couple of days, the clouds I think are going to win out and hold these temperatures down.
I brought up the GFS upper air because I want to match it up to what's going on the watches and warnings map. And it's kind of interesting here where you've got this upper low in the east. And again, this is going to take a few days for it to get out of the way. But you have this deep powerhouse upper low that we've been talking about. I looked this morning, Joe. There were some winter weather advisories up in uh, parts of northern Idaho and even into western Montana. So some higher elevations here, getting some end of June, almost early July snowfall. But if you look at this, and then of course also look at the fact that when you follow this sort of ragged height line here, you got this little bulge. There's a little shortwave trough that's across central Missouri. There's another one that's up in northern Minnesota. So when you look at this, and now when I show you, bring up the watches and warnings map, you'll see how it kind of plays out with respect to what's going on in the upper air. We've got flash flood watches up for parts of northeastern Missouri, west central Illinois, also for much of central Kentucky under flash flood watches. Severe weather tonight is this bright yellow area, eastern Montana, northeastern Wyoming, western South and North Dakota, where we have a tornado watch working. Also, excuse me, the western Montana, northern Idaho flood watches there. The light blue in Nevada, those are frost advisories that are up. And of course, the purplish area that's supposed to be red, I guess, but those are red flag warnings. So while the action is going on, there are some areas that are bone dry and with fire risk. And we're talking Arizona, much of New Mexico, into parts of Colorado and Utah. And those brownish counties, those are heat advisories that are up. Just a few areas in northeast Texas, also East Kansas, and on up into central South and North Dakota, seeing some heat advisories there. And really, that's just about it. I kind of, summer's in full swing, but no area is getting baked by any kind of major heat wave. The Southwest, it's in the hundreds because it's always in the hundreds in the Southwest. So
That's right.
we're not talking breaking news there.
That's right. It always never have known the desert Southwest not to go without a slew of days in the hundreds once we get past the Memorial Day weekend, and and that has been for more than a little while now. Parts of the West have been under excessive heat advisories or warnings. So if you're heading out west, um, don't overexert yourself, because I don't care what they say, Joe. When they say, "Oh, Arizona, we have a dry heat," I've been to Arizona, and regardless of whether it's a
As have
dry heat
I.
or wet heat or whatever, it ain't fun to be out for any long length of time.
No, it isn't. Here's tonight's severe weather risk by the Storm Prediction Center, folks. Two small areas of marginal risk: eastern Tennessee, another one in southeastern Wisconsin, marginal risk in central Texas, and then, of course, we have that tornado watch working up in western North and northwestern South Dakota, eastern Montana, and a little sliver there in northeastern Wyoming in slight risk. The next couple of days, this upper low is it's not going to be enough that these storms are going to be producing severe weather. We are in general thunderstorms. Tomorrow, the marginal risk zone: southern Kentucky and Tennessee, southeast to South and North Carolina, and of course that big area of slight risk, eastern North and South Dakota, eastern Nebraska. This is probably where you will see some watch boxes up. And then as we move on to Wednesday, we have marginal risk: southern Virginia to Georgia, northwest to southern Illinois, southeast Missouri, western Minnesota, eastern Dakota is under a marginal risk, and a chunk of central and northeastern Montana under a marginal risk. And of course, the West Coast, the Southwest, going east into Colorado, New Mexico, and the western part of the plains, no thunderstorms are forecast.
Lovely. And certainly not the case here. We had one today. We'll probably have another one late tomorrow, and especially so again on Wednesday. But that's summer, Joe. And one last day in June. Can't believe that we're at the end of the month of June tomorrow.
I know, isn't it crazy? That
It
means
is.
in not too in the not too distant future, we'll be in the heart of hurricane season, and then in the not too distant future after that, we will be getting closer and closer to another winter.
Right. And are you going to do any celebrating on Thursday, Joe, at noontime?
Thursday, July 2nd at 12 noon.
Actually, since we're on daylight time, I think it would actually be 1 o'clock.
Well, what is so special about Thursday at 1 p.m.?
The year is half over. Happy,
Oh,
happy, happy half year.
half year. All right. My half birthday's coming up.
Well, my half birthday is on Groundhog Day, but would you believe?
Really?
Yeah, February 2nd.
Wow.
All of you out there can figure out now what my birthday is based upon that piece of information.
Except in a
Uh,
leap year.
uh,
It might be able to
and
throw it off.
and also Saturday, believe it or not, a lot of people think that during the summertime we're closest to the sun, but actually Saturday, where the Earth will reach that point in its orbit at what we call aphelion, we're going to be 3 million miles further away from the sun on the 4th of July, as opposed to early January, where we're actually closest to the sun. But again, the heat and the cold that we experience is not due to the positioning of our planet relative to the sun. It's all due to the tilt of the Earth on its axis. And right now, our axis is tilting the northern hemisphere toward the sun. Sun's in the sky now for like 15 hours. We really heat up nice, and that's why it's so warm now, as opposed to the winter time. Even though in the winter we're closer to the sun.
The satellite loop, Joe, the upper low is so well defined up just east of the coast of Maine. You can see the rotation there, just sort of spinning away, not making any progress in any direction, just rotating, rotating, rotating. Now, here's the thing: if you're south and west of that last bicycle spoke, then the weather actually is pretty decent. If central and South Jersey, southeast Pennsylvania, southern much of Pennsylvania, down into Maryland, Virginia, and into northeastern North Carolina, really enjoying some very nice weather here. You've got blow-ups going on right now of clouds and some showers and storms, and these are rain producers with the flood watches that are up in Tennessee and Kentucky. You can see it here, this little short wave that we pointed out, just kind of flaring up a little bit, and also starting to see, if you look up in the sort of center left near where North Dakota is, there's a big blow up of storms there that's going on right now, and another one just to the south. And of course, that's all rotating around this massive upper low that you can see the rotation here and how well defined that upper low is. That's up in the northwestern part of the country. And in the meantime, bone dry. The dust issue, by the way, if you look on the satellite loop down on the bottom, you can still see that hazy look in the Gulf of Mexico, but offshore now. None of it's really coming on along the Gulf Coast and into the Northwest Caribbean. Still seeing some dust there. So obviously, while that dust is in the picture, we're not going to be seeing any kind of tropical storm development as it does get in the way. And you can also see a little rotation here. It looks like a rotation off the Pacific coast. So we're going to take a look at that when we look at the tropics and see if there's anything going on. Because quite frankly, I didn't look at the Pacific today. I looked at the Atlantic, but I did not look at the Pacific. And by the way, here's the radar, just to show everybody some of these bigger storms that are flaring up in Tennessee and Kentucky with some heavy rains, and they're kind of moving east, and then the eastern edge of that's moving southeast. Some scattered cells, western North and South Carolina, northwest Georgia. Also seeing that action up in southeastern Wisconsin, where we talked about that marginal risk. An east-west band up north of Minneapolis in central Minnesota, and the blowups out to the west. There it is on the radar. That cloud blow up is now is running ahead of what's on the radar clearly, but the radar is catching up, and there's a little small circular area here of thunderstorms in northeast Montana moving northward, and all of this back here, Joe, a lot of rain back. I mean, just overrunning rain, rotating upper low and overrunning rain in northwestern Montana, and kind of arcing back westward as that upper low just spins and spins and spins.
Yeah, it's your typical summertime pattern. There's not much more I can say. And at least as we move into the weekend, if you like sunshine for the holiday weekend, and who doesn't? I don't know how many people are going to be able to go anywhere this weekend in the current situation that we have, but at least it looks like after we get over the hump on Wednesday, that we'll be able to enjoy um, decent amount, a lot of sunshine. As far as thunderstorms, Joe, for the time beyond Wednesday, I mentioned a slight chance late on Friday and maybe a scattering of shower and storm activity perhaps on Saturday. I think Sunday and Monday of next week will be just dry with a mixture, a blend of sun and clouds, and
Um,
moderate levels of humidity.
that works for me. That works for me. I'm not, I'm not particularly bullish about uh, showers and storms, other than what happens in the early part of the week as we go through the end of the weekend into the weekend. They should be few and far between. So I think for the vast majority of folks, it's going to be a pretty decent, fairly decent Friday, Saturday, Sunday combination. Surface map tonight, by the way, low pressure is sitting over the Cape. With the cold front offshore. This was the front that we waited to move through yesterday that produced severe weather in some areas last night. By the way, I meant to ask you, and I'm just going to come full screen here for a minute, and then we'll go. I'll bring the map back up. But uh, it was, SBC when they put that severe thunderstorm watch up yesterday. They cut it off right along the north shore of Long Island.
Right,
And they had it for New York City. They had it for northern New Jersey, the northern third of the drive. If you divide the state, the southern edge of that watch actually went down fairly far to the south, not quite to 195. But when I saw it, I said, why did they leave Long Island out? It was close enough. And there were some strong cells that moved through here. Make no mistake. Yesterday evening, but I got to give them kudos because they really that watch box that they put out yesterday, I think worked out really well in terms of who got hit with the bigger storms. They nailed it pretty good.
yeah, I kind of said, why aren't they just, they have everybody else in the tri-state area, why don't they just throw in Long Island as well? But you're right, they did do fairly well by themselves. Maybe they felt that a lot of these storms would skim the bottom of the box, or maybe would those that were moving out of the box would dissipate before causing any significant damage or significant threat to the island of Long. Maybe that's why they did it. But and we should point out, Joe, that when we have a thunderstorm watch as opposed to a warning, the watches are not posted by our own National Weather Service here in New York. They're posted by the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. But if anything develops within the box area or within the watch zone of significance, that's what comes out of our local weather offices is the warning or the threat of imminent thundery weather.
By the way, my record was kept intact yesterday because I had just posted about the fact that there was the possibility of a severe thunderstorm watch going up. Right before I posted, I double checked SPC's website to see if they were going to put the watch box up yet, and they didn't. So I posted my website post on it, and I put it on the Patreon platform. And I'm telling you, I don't think I don't think more than a minute and a half or 2 minutes went by before they issued the watch, and I had to post all over again. So they wait for me, and then they see they go, oh, Joe's posted, so we can put the watch up now, so that he has to do double work. So so once again, and this morning I just real quick, and then I'm going to go bring back the surface map. But this morning, when I was looking at SPC's map, I happened to click it right at the time that they were changing everything. So I had just posted about the fact that there would be some scattered thunderstorms around today. And all of a sudden, I look at the map, and they have up the map where it had a marginal risk for southern and southeastern New England down to Long Island and points east. And I'm like, they didn't just do that, did they? You cannot. I was John McEnroe. You cannot be serious, okay? But as it turned out, it was it was the leftover. It was the leftover map from the overnight, and they were slow to take it out. And then they finally took it out, and the day two became the day one. So it's like, okay, good. At least this time around, because whenever there's a risk, I like to mention it if there's a marginal risk or a slight risk. And I was looking this morning, I said, well, doesn't look like it's a severe setup here, so there shouldn't be any kind of risk. And they uh, that would have added insult to injury with respect to what happened over the weekend.
It would.
Yes. You know how touchy I can be.
I know. I've seen your temper.
Yes. So here's your, should it be yes, here's the 21Z surface map, a little low at 41 and 70. I'm seeing dew points, Joe, with some upper 50s dew points in at Monticello, at Binghamton, Western New York, northern Pennsylvania, and back up into toward Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. Dew points near the coast are closer to mostly between 62 and 65. But the temperatures are only in the upper 70s. So again, that makes it at least a bit more reasonable.
It does. It does. And at this time of the year, you look for any kind of a break that you can find. But of course, what you're out west near that huge upper low. There's a little bit of snow that's falling, isn't there?
Or at least there was, yeah. The upper low in the west just kind of rotates around itself. So they're going to be dealing with this for the next couple of days while we have our upper low in New England, which starting on Wednesday, it begins to weaken and then swings southeastward offshore. And that's the reason why we're not really going with any kind of uh, shower or thunderstorm activity for Thursday. Friday, you got this. It's a little hard to see, and the model has really backed off from what it showed here a couple of days ago. But there's a little shortwave that's coming through, and that's your little backdoor front that's going to be coming through on Friday and moving to our south. And over the weekend for Saturday and Sunday, we're kind of on the edge here, Joe. We got this northwest flow. There's another shortwave that's swinging down from eastern Canada that's rotating southeastward. And that is, we'll see how that plays out early next week. It actually strengthens a bit as it moves into Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and then moves off the coast of Nova Scotia. This would be for Monday and Tuesday. And this might mean a little bit of humidity relief. Although again, I don't think it's going to be crazy humid this weekend, but there'll be maybe a little bit of a drop in the dew points Sunday into Monday, and then of course, as you said, after that we get into a bit of a ridge position, the middle and latter part of next week. But we're kind of on the edge here. The upper high is centered more in the southwest than it is in the east, so that might open the door for some weak weather fronts to move on through. We'll just have to see. But again, I don't see anything. If you're looking for widespread rain to alleviate the dry conditions, this is not the pattern for it. It really isn't.
Yeah, yeah. Excuse me. I don't know why my voice of late has been like,
It
but
happens.
it happens. Yeah, yeah.
GFS has got snow in western Wyoming and parts of Idaho overnight into Tuesday morning, and then that disappears, of course. And here's your you look at the east, you get another flare up of scattered showers and storms for Tuesday. You get another flare up for Wednesday. Then Thursday it relaxes. Here's your back door, folks. Very evident here on the GFS tonight. You got this backdoor front right in there. Those showers that you see up in northern Maine and back into Canada, dropping southeastward, and they basically fall apart over time. We get that little back door here You mentioned a chance maybe of a shower or storm on Friday. The GFS kind of has it there. This is a weak front. It's just pretty much going to fall apart once it goes by, and the weekend looks, I don't know, just kind of reasonable in my view. And then of course we get another push and maybe a bit of an onshore flow for the first part of next week, which will be dry, but it will be maybe a little cooler and less humid as we move into Sunday night, Monday, and into Tuesday. And
Well,
then,
my thinking was with that cold front is that as it edges in from the north and east, that it might set off a late day or evening thunderstorm threat on Friday. Then the front moves on through. Then it kind of settles or subsides just to our south and then starts coming back later on Saturday, which would bring the possibility again of showers and storms our way. And then we go back into a more humid weather pattern to finish out the weekend on Sunday. In other words, that backdoor front doesn't seem to have just enough, quite enough oomph to push
all
all
the
the
way.
way past us to our south. It has just enough to get past us, but not too much further. Remember those commercials? Oh dear, now I'm really showing my age. Back in the '60s, Shell gasoline used to promote. I don't even know if there was such a chemical or whatever, platformate. They
Oh,
used to. You remember those commercials, Joe, where they used to have
yeah,
one car, they would drive. This is the car without Shell gasoline. They'd
right.
get us to a certain distance. Then they'd put up this big sign. It was made of canvas or paper or whatever, saying without platformate. Then they started the car up with platformate, with Shell oil or Shell gas, and the thing just rammed right through that and just continued. So
So this is clearly without Platinate.
platformate.
Platformate. Okay. Uh, the Hurricane Center still highlighting an area off the East Coast. 20% chance next 5 days. We don't care. And also this weak tropical wave that is east of the windwards. 10% chance over the next 5 days. So let's look and see what they're doing in the Pacific. Because we do see that little rotation there. Ah, so this is that little X. Blah, 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 blah. Slightly less organized since this morning. Still could become a short-lived depression later today or tonight before it moves in the cooler waters. 60% chance, and another smaller area to the south, and maybe some development by the weekend with a 0 to 20% chance listed there. Again, the Pacific remaining quiet is probably uh, a, a hint that the Atlantic season, once we get through the normal quiet period that we're in now, will rev up later in July or certainly when we get into August. A lot of variables in play. Got to get rid of the Saharan dust, but that remains to be seen. Johnny Quest Joe has a question for you. He says an eclipse for July 4th or 5th? Question mark.
There is an eclipse, but you won't see much of it. The shadow, the Earth's shadow, is composed of two parts. There's the dark inner part. That's called the umbra. And when the umbra falls on the moon, you know there's an eclipse. That's when the moon looks like it's being eaten away slowly but surely. And when it's fully into the umbra, we get a total eclipse. The moon turns a reddish coloration. But there's also around the umbra, there's a much lighter shadow called the penumbra, light, so light in fact, or so faint that even when the moon is entirely in the penumbra, you hardly can see anything. And come late, is it now Friday night, July the 4th? Actually, I think it's late. Yeah, late Friday night or early Saturday morning, the moon will go into the penumbra. But again, it's so faint you won't notice anything. So when you look skyward at the moon, it may be indeed experiencing an eclipse, a penumbral eclipse, but you won't notice anything because the shadow is just too dim, too faint to make any significant impression. You won't. It's nothing. Don't don't
Okay.
build your. If you're into astronomy, nobody is building their entire week around that event coming up.
Jason Barry asked this question, and I'll my answer to it is he says, "Is snow in July considered late or early?" I consider July as the flip month, so I'm going to say it's considered late. Okay, if you get snow in August, to me that's considered early.
Yeah, yeah. That's Well, actually,
Because the way I look at it, Joe, is July is the summer month. Okay,
right.
from beginning to end, it is the summer month. So if it snows in July, to me, it's in that no man's land. So we can say that it's late from the previous year, but then once we get to August 1st, because now we're starting to look at the downhill slide of where we pass that the normal highs, because the normal highs are still rising through July, and then they start to drop after the first 7 or 8 days of August. That to me that's early if it happens in August
Yeah,
because you're on the
yeah.
downhill. We're still on the uphill with temperatures, so to me that's late.
Supposedly, the Tambora volcanic eruption of 1815 led to the so-called year without a summer in 1816, and that also helped the farmers, the old farmers' almanac. What happened was that supposedly, answer the phone, will you?
This might be
You know what?
Doctor. It
You
could
know
be
what? This is my son.
it could be important. It might be Doctor Bombay.
Yeah, it might be Dr. Bombay. Uh, Supposedly, they lost a page in the 1816 edition of the Farmer's Almanac. So in 1815, the printer went to let's see, who was it? Who was the very first editor? Robert Thomas, the editor, the very first editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. But Robert Thomas was sick and didn't want to hear anything about this. He was in bed and he had a fever, right? And so he told the printer, I don't care, make something up for the weather of July of 1816. So the printer decided to have some fun. And in a few places in New England, he mentioned snow. Well, guess what? In the year without a summer,
It
it
did.
actually did snow. And people remember that. It's my goodness, the Old Farmer's Almanac, they're so accurate. They even predicted snow in July, and it happened. So that's presumably why they're so renowned. It's
Yes.
because the printer decided to have a little bit of a joke, and that's why everybody makes a big deal about the Old Farmer's Almanac.
But I'm just pulling up the Upton radar again because Beaver was mentioning that there's some raindrops in Setauket, which is to the west of me. That's part of the area with this cell that just moved off the coast of Brooklyn and Queens, and that's dying out. So there's not much left to it. But that next area is now coming down and moving southward, approaching Peekskill, Middletown, Peekskill, West Milford. That's sort of where the triangle is on the radar. But those look like they're starting to weaken a bit as well. You might be seeing a little bit of rain where you are at this point, Mr. Rayo, but that area is moving southeast. And of course, as we said, you start to get past that, get closer and closer to sunset. The daytime heating is going bye-bye, and these things will start to weaken and fall apart. So
It does look kind of dark looking out toward my glass doors out toward the back. It does look like a bit dark right now. I can't tell if it's raining, but it it might be doing something.
Block 505 said the official snow season is July 1st to June 30th. Yeah, I know, but I'm kind of stick with, at least from the standpoint of the words I'm picking. I'm going to stick with my view that if it's in
I think
July,
I think that's what if you look at least in the weather records at Central Park, they start the snow
July
records in
1st.
July,
Yeah,
July
but
1st.
you know what? Snow in July anywhere in the United States, even in the highest mountaintop, is very rare. So I'm not gonna. It doesn't really apply to us.
Right.
So for some mountain out in the Northwest, okay, I guess we can we can have a debate over this. William Uber just said that he had 2 drops of rain in a square foot. I believe it. I believe it. He's literally, I could walk to his house. He's so close. Um, so he at least can validate what I said earlier about how they have been all around me, but seen very little of it. Let's do a little bit of Briller Jeopardy here as we do every night. So let me find it because I didn't
Believe it or
put
not, I actually have mine
you're
all
all ready. So you go ahead.
locked and
You
loaded.
go first.
Oh, okay. So we have here on our Monday night Briller Jeopardy. Category is SO? What does that mean? Category SO. You
So,
think you know old movies.
oh, so you think you
Question
know,
one.
so you think you old, oh, so you think you know old movies is the
Category. Oh,
category.
I
Uh-huh.
see. He didn't have a comma. I'm looking at the top row here. Category SO. So you think you know old movies. Question one. Who plays Charlton Heston's mother in both the Ten Commandments and in Ben-Hur?
Mrs. Heston. I don't know. Actually, in the back of my mind, there is as for some reason, I'm thinking that there is some kind of important connection between the actress who played his mother in was it Ten Commandments you said
Ten
and
Commandments and also Ben-Hur.
Ben Hur as opposed to the sequel about his sister Ben Him.
Ben-Him.
Right. I don't know the name, and she was not a well-known actress, but I don't know the name.
Martha Scott.
Martha Scott. That actually is a well-known name. I take it
How
back.
how about this? This is not one of Scott's questions, but it's one of mine. Who is the woman who always seemed to play in most of his movies Jimmy Stewart's mother? Two examples.
Oh, that was oh my God. She's
It's an alliterative name.
yeah, no, I know. Hold on. Her face is right in front of Beulah Biondi.
Beulah
Beulah
Biondi.
Biondi, yeah.
Right,
And
right.
she lived, by the way, I believe she lived to the age of 92 and died when she tripped over her cat. you know, yeah,
Is that
The Lord chose to do it in a creative way. I don't know. It's just,
right?
but
Mr. Smith goes to
she always,
Washington.
oddly enough, she always played those kind of roles where she really wasn't that much older than Jimmy Stewart was.
Right,
So,
right.
but she had the look.
She had the look.
She had the
Oh
look.
yeah, yeah.
Gladys
Well,
Cooper, one of my favorite actresses. I always thought, she's just, in my view, she was brilliant. Gladys Cooper, who
right,
actually she shows up on one of the famous Twilight Zone episodes with Robert Redford, where
right,
Robert Redford plays Mr. Death.
right,
Gladys Cooper is also in another Twilight Zone episode. She did a couple of Alfred Hitchcock episodes. She was in Rebecca, uh, and she played Betty Davis's. That's the other. She played Betty Davis's mother in Now Voyager, and she really was not that much older than Betty Davis, but she was just brilliant when
right.
she got in character. She got in character.
Yeah,
She was Betty Davis's not so nice mother in Now Voyager.
yeah, yeah.
Beulah Biondi.
The question back to Briller Jeopardy. Number two, what newspaper owner's career inspired Citizen Kane?
Oh, that was Hearst, William
William
Randolph.
Randolph Hearst.
He didn't
Uh,
like he the movie didn't get much play because Hearst had so much power. He was he owned the Hearst newspapers that dominated the West Coast. He had so much power that he got the movie theater owners to refuse to play Citizen Kane in it because he thought the
and
movie was about him.
and
And the opera singer, okay, William Randolph Hearst was had a long affair with Marion Davies, who was an actress from the 30s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's where the kind of connection where the opera singer that Charles Foster Kane winds up marrying and trying to prop her as an opera singer when she was terrible is that's the connection between and the thing is Marion Davies, I don't know why it was cast he if he was trying to cast to make Marion Davies in a negative light. I don't I don't know the history behind that, but
Right.
that's sort of where that was at.
And
I actually went to the Hearst Mansion when I was many years ago when I went to California, and it was I mean talk about overdone. I mean just over the top. I mean really over the top. But it was quite an architectural feature there.
Do you remember the New York Journal American? That was the Hearst
Vaguely,
newspaper. That's back in the
yes,
mid '60s. That's one my family used to buy. These are newspapers now, folks, that are long gone. The Journal American, the Herald Tribune, the Daily Mirror,
yes.
all
Oh,
gone.
once upon a time, there were like a dozen newspapers in New York City, and
Right.
there was a morning paper, an afternoon paper, an evening
Absolutely.
paper, and yeah, it was
The Night
crazy.
Owl.
The Night Owl, sure.
Uh,
All right, is that the last one on your side?
Briller Jeopardy number 3 is which is the first R-rated film to win Best Picture? I'll give you the year. He says, think 1971.
71. Hmm. I don't think 71 was The Sting. So that's I don't think that was it. And The Godfather was 72, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Um, and we talked about Midnight Cowboy being the first X-rated movie.
I'll give you a hint. I know Scott's probably saying, "Don't give him a hint." This was in one part of this particular movie. They took a car apart to try to find something.
They took the French Connection. No, that was later.
French-
French Connection
no,
was 71.
that's what he says
All
here.
right, okay. I know. It's in there in the early 70s somewhere.
All right.
The French Connection.
And the last question: who was the first actor to appear on the cover of Time magazine?
The first actor
Hmm.
to appear on the cover.
Right. And he gives a hint here. Think comedy.
Comedy.
Think comedy, Joe.
Oh, Charlie Chaplin.
There you go.
Okay, so now here's for you. So you think you know astronomy is your category.
Oh, okay.
What four planets have rings? This is easy for you.
Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune.
I would note how carefully you said the U planet, but we'll leave it there.
Oh, you mean
Uh,
Uranus? Oh,
yes.
Uranus. Yeah.
Um, what planet has the greatest difference between day and night temperature?
Believe it or not, that's the one that's closest to the sun, Mercury.
Correct.
Mercury on the sunny side is 800 degrees, and on the dark side about 300 below zero.
Correct.
And we used to think that Mercury did not rotate, that it was like the moon, it was locked in position. But now we know that it actually does rotate at an interval of 59 days, which means if you go through all the mathematics, combining the rotation and the revolution period around the sun, what we have is a planet that I think has sunshine on one side for something like 150 days, and then it's in darkness for 150 days. But closest to the sun, and yet the greatest amount of or the widest gap between extreme heat, hot, and extreme cold.
Okay, so the next question is: these stars never set below the horizon.
Circumpolar,
They're circumpolar stars.
right?
Uh, and, okay, I'm trying to figure out how this is worded, so I'll read it word for word. These stars never set below horizon from given latitude are called question mark. Okay, circumpolar stars.
Right.
Four
The Big
hills.
Dipper, from our latitude here in New York, the Big Dipper is a circumpolar constellation. It never rises, it never sets. It goes around the North Star, the pole star. It's near the northern horizon, but above the horizon, like in the fall. And at this time of the year, spring or early summer, it's way up overhead. But it just endlessly circles around the North Star. None of the stars rise or set. They're always visible at any time of the year.
And there are four hills on Mars. They are named after whom?
Four hills?
Yes,
Four hills.
there are
I know
four hills on
Vol-
Mars, and they're named after four people.
hmm. I'm going to take a guess. I really don't. I mean, I know volcanoes. There's one Olympus Mons, which is one off volcano named after people.
These are
Well,
four real people.
how about Percival Lovell? Is that one of the four?
Well, the answer is the people who perished on Columbia.
Oh, the people who, well, that there were seven, not four.
Well, I guess they only named 4 of the hill.
Well, that's not right.
Well, I don't know. It's just that's just the question. Maybe they named the other 3 names for 3 other places.
I don't. Yeah. All right.
Okay. By the way, I want to correct something from yesterday. I misread. The caribou record, 11 days above 90, is actually 11 consecutive days above 80. And they just set the all-time record of 13 consecutive days above 80.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
That kind of reached. That was
yeah,
kind of
I know it didn't
reaching in
make any
90.
sense.
Yeah.
But it's a Sunday morning. I'm half in the bag. Barely had my coffee. Didn't even kick in. What do you want? Um, and this will be, by the way, the warmest June on record. The average high doesn't reach 75 in Caribou until July 1st. So talk about crazy. And also, New York City hit 90 degrees Central Park for the second time this month, and not today, over the weekend. And that, I said 12 for the entire summer. So I've already, so 2 cards have been played. I got 10 left.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens in July and August.
Yes, we will. So, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any. Oh, I wanted to ask you just one thing before we go, and I think it's worth. This is a conversation I think that maybe we should get Bill Goodman involved in when he's got some free time. But it's just been kind of bounced around this whole notion of the fact that they are thinking about changing the way they do warnings and advisories and pretty much getting rid of a lot of advisories, including the winter weather advisory uh, and um, and so on. And I just was curious as to what your thoughts on this are.
Yeah, they should make the language a bit clearer. And I said, I was at a National Weather Association conference, I think it was in 2014, where they did a whole thing on how they had issued a watch, a winter storm watch in Atlanta. They
Right.
changed it to an advisory, and the majority of people who were there when they made the change figured, oh, we don't have anything to worry about now because they thought the advisory meant that the threat was not going to be as bad as a watch. Nobody really understood what an advisory is or whatever. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, they should.
My general view on it is that I'm actually, for the most part, in favor of the idea, because they took it to the other extreme and they were issuing advisories for virtually every drop of mist that was falling out of the sky or every snow flurry that was falling out. Where it gets a little tricky is every area's got the criteria is different. Its criteria in New York City is different than what it is in Plattsburgh. And the criteria in Atlanta is not the same as the criteria in Chicago. I'm thinking also in the West, in the mountains, particularly you see this in California and up in the Northwest, where they put up winter weather advisories for 24 to 36 inches. So,
Right.
so I'm not. I'll be. That doesn't impact us directly. I'm just curious as to how they wind up handling something like that, because everywhere else, if it's a 1 to 3, 2 inch, 2 to 4 inch snowfall that would normally be in an advisory criteria, there'll be a weather statement that will go out with that to explain the situation and so on, which is fine. But what do you do? What do you do in those places that get 2 or 3 feet? I guess you put out a statement saying, hey, you're getting 2 to 3 feet. I know a lot of those places are sparsely populated. Some places don't have any human beings at all in there, and they're mainly put up for roadways that are, going through the mountains. Uh, but I'm just curious. Before I pass final judgment, I'm just kind of curious as to what the thinking is with regards to that.
We just saw this past winter. Wasn't there one particular setup where um, the National Weather Service in Albany had winter storm warnings up for Ulster County and Sullivan County and Dutchess County, and the National Weather Service in Philadelphia had a storm warning up for winter storm warning up for Sussex County, and also Binghamton had one for one of the other. Everybody was all surrounded, and in Orange County stuck out like a sore thumb. They were surrounded by
Right. And
warnings
this
and
is
advisories,
this
and they
is
were the only
where
ones that did.
yeah, this
You
is
know,
where it gets a little squirrely sometimes because Yeah, it stops at one county line and then starts at another. My pet peeve, and it's only for a short period of time. I just wish that when they sent out those forecasts that they would do it all at once, where all the areas they get that have advisories and winter and watches and warnings, send them out all at once, so that we're not doing it piecemeal and sitting here waiting for, New York's put their stuff out, but Mount Holly it hasn't, or oftentimes it's Albany is the one that's the last one to put out because they do have a lot of counties that they have to handle. But I maybe a time coordination to everybody, just have it all ready by say 4:30, hit the button, and then go, so that we get everything at once, and not waiting for all these puzzle pieces to start putting it together. But as I said, this is a Bill Goodman question. Reaver 501 says, do you wish you worked for the NWS? Do people who work there have to work overnight shifts? I'll say they do. I
No,
was
but
I when they passed out the genes for being able to work overnight, the good Lord skipped me.
no,
Okay,
but
I could never do the overnight shift.
but Joe, and you interned there for a number of years, way back
Yes,
when.
a
But I
million years
believe
ago.
it's still in effect. This is still in effect. And we can ask Bill about this. When you're working for the National Weather Service Forecast Office, you're constantly on a swing shift.
Yes.
You may be penciled in, let's say this week for the 3 a.m. to 10 a.m. shift, and then in a couple of weeks you'll be on the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift. It's
Well,
crazy.
how it used to be was you would do you do midnights. I think you would do 6 midnights, and then you would get like 4 days off, and then you would do the th- the 3 to 11 or the 4 to 12 shift. Okay, and then you would from there, and then you do a bunch of those, and then you get a few days off, and then you would do the day shift, the 7 to 3 or the 8 to 4, whatever it is, and then you would get a couple of days off, and then you would go back to midnight. Now, there
Right.
are certain jobs that you might be always on the day shift, or you might be always on the evening shift. Some people love working midnights and would rather be on midnights all the time. So I wonder whether they do make exceptions for that. Would have to ask him. Jason Schaefer, just going back to that whole the advisories thing, mentioning about the fact that the Blizzard Watch was canned. Yeah, the Blizzard Watch, that made complete sense to me. Cam the Blizzard Watch, if only because of the fact that it's probably one of the most misunderstood uh, watch was one of the most misunderstood watches slash warnings that we have, because of the fact that a blizzard has, in the Northeast anyway, has become equated with uh, mega snowfalls, 1 foot plus snowfalls. And we all know that that's not what a blizzard is. A blizzard is a wind and visibility event. It's not necessarily a heavy snow event.
And somewhere on and I'm sure you could find this on Google Images, for a storm that we had a few years ago, I think here in the New York area, those illuminated traffic signs, the sign said blizzard warning, except the B was burned out. And so it looks like a lizard
Blizzard
warning.
warning.
And somebody wrote to
I think that
the
showed up on the Southern State Parkway.
yeah, and somebody wrote, it says, what's next? Locusts?
Well, don't say that too loud, because given the kind of year we've had, would it really shock you if we wound up with a locust invasion?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't me either.
It wouldn't, all these creatures that have suddenly coming out of the woodwork. The only thing we don't have to worry about this year, I think next year will be our turn. But I think in places like Kentucky and Ohio and Western Maryland, this is the year of their 17-year cicada invasion. And I think our turn is going to come next year or the year after. It all depends upon what brood of cicada we're talking about. I used to think that the cicada, the so-called 17-year cicada, was a one-time thing, but it's not that way. Various parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic have their own significant brood that emerges after 13 or 17 years. And this year, if you go, I
And they
think,
what do they and they come out to basic, right? Joe, I lost Mr. Rayo. Are you still with us, Mr. Rayo?
their eggs.
There you go.
Are you there?
Yeah, you just
Hello.
dropped out just I just got a thing that said my internet connection is unstable. So perhaps we should just wrap up your thought about the cicada.
No, I always thought that it was a one-time deal every 17 years, but apparently there are various parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. And what do? They come out, they emerge, they frolic for a while. I guess they eat or
They
whatever.
eat
Then they mate. They lay the eggs, and
and then they
that's it.
die.
And then they die. Yes,
Just like a salmon, you swim upstream, spawn, and then you're never heard from again.
right.
All right. So we made it to 8 o'clock. Actually, 8:01 is our time right now, Eastern time. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. This is a this week going into the 4th of July weekend. There's sort of a semi-holiday feel to it. So we'll be back tomorrow night at the usual time, 8 o'clock Eastern. So be well, be safe, and we will see you tomorrow. Good night, Mr. Rayo.
Good night, sir.